That is the timer, folks. That is now expired, which means we are in our 2021 GIS Day celebration, live webcast. Joseph Kursky here with you. I'm wearing my geography bow tie just for your benefit today. Why not? It's GIS Day, but for us in the community, every day is GIS Day, correct? Every day is GIS Day. What is GIS Day though specifically? It is a day set aside, sort of like Arbor Day or Earth Day, Earth Science Week, and there are other days during the year where we sort of set aside a little bit of time to think about what GIS means to the world and to its people and why it all matters. So for those of you that are just getting into geospatial technology, geographic information systems, location analytics, there are numerous phrases that describe this, geomatics in Canada and other places. There are numerous phrases that describe relatively the same idea, and that is location matters. And so mapping it, but not just mapping it like where is Turkmenistan, where is Algeria, where is New York City, why things are where they are. Why do relationships and patterns and trends seem to manifest themselves in geographic patterns? And then from those geographic patterns, how can we make a decision based on our knowledge and based on analyzing data spatially to build a more resilient, healthier, happier, more equitable world? That's what geospatial technology offers. And it's not just a promise, but it's actually, if you start looking at the case studies, people are actually using geospatial technologies to make a better world. And that's what is intriguing and valuable to me about the technology. It's not buffering, it's not just overlaying, it's not looking at the table of data, it's not symbolizing, etc. It's much more than that. It's about making smarter decisions because, let's face it, we do have some serious issues on our planet. A lot of the variables are going in the wrong direction: ocean acidification, urban sprawl, deforestation, etc. Right? But with geotechnologies, we can help not only understand our complex world in which we live, our modern 21st century world with 7.5 billion people shaping the planet and natural forces happening like plate tectonics and et cetera happening on the planet. How can we understand that complex world? Well, maps are imperfect representations of reality. Maps are imperfect representations of reality. They always have been. They're very useful imperfect representations of reality, but they are imperfect nonetheless. And one of the things that I want to thread in here is be critical of the data. Know where the data comes from in your GIS. Know who created it, why it was created, and so on. But using maps and geospatial technology, along with this tool right here, this is the most important tool in geospatial technology, not the buffering and the overlay and the geocoding, etc., but your spatially enabled critical thinking brain. And that's what gives me hope for the future, because people using the technology are making smarter decisions. It's going to take a while to get there, but we've embarked on that journey, and I'm glad you're part of the community with me. So one of the ways to think about geospatial technology, I think, is to look at the different components of GIS. So for example, the G part, the map, the I part, the information behind the map, and being able to use these variables and making bivariate maps and derivative products like story maps and dashboards that we'll talk about to communicate the results of your research is really becoming quite powerful. So just as an example, you can make these relationship maps using, for example, ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, and other GIS software to show the relationship of two different variables. In this case, is really quite fascinating from the county health rankings data. So again, be critical of where the data comes from, but smokers and drinkers. Interesting. Why do the patterns exist that manifest themselves? Can we trust the data? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? Right, Dr. Sheila, that's our age-old mantra of geography. What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? And it applies even if you're not a geographer. If you're in health or remote sensing or transportation or civil engineering or some other field, you're always going to be looking at the whys of where. And so while our Earth is a complex place, GIS has become easier, more accessible, simpler to use, but we're never going to get to the point where it's just click, 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 and then we're done and we've got all our problems solved. Because again, the world is dynamic, it's changing, people are shaping the planet. And so inherently, it's a complex thing to understand. And GIS is never going to get to be easy in the sense that all my problems are going to be solved. It still requires you to think spatially and critically, which is one of the reasons why I love it as an instructional tool. So GIS Day, you can go to gisday.com and look at the 1,500 events happening. Why are these events happening? If it was just some old technology, people wouldn't be excited about showcasing what they're doing with it. But again, it's people making a difference. So it's government agencies, nonprofit, academia, private industry opening their doors. Many of the events this year are obviously virtual, but opening their doors about what they're doing with geospatial technology and inviting people in, whether it's face-to-face or virtually, to show what they're doing with the tools. So that's exciting that that's happening. I probably, like many of you, are conducting numerous GIS Day presentations this week. I've got 14 this year over the span of about 4 days. And it started off with some very interesting communities in Jamaica using GIS, and they invited me to come speak with them about like hazards resilience. Obviously, they deal with, as many places around the world do, some very severe hazards. In their case, hurricanes, landslides, coastal erosion, et cetera. And how do we have sustainable agriculture, sustainable tourism, and so on. So it's a fascinating study in what people are doing with GIS. On a related note, we're going to talk about books later, but I just can't resist. Right now I'm reading Alastair Bonnet's, Dr. Sheila, you probably know Dr. Bonnet, UK geographer. He's written a book called The Age of Islands, and I'm reading it right now, and it's just fascinating. Human-created islands, for example, off of China, in the Arabian Sea, Persian Gulf. It's just fascinating. People-created islands and also naturally created islands, like in the mouths of river deltas. Anyway, it's fascinating. Human-environment interaction. So I'm reading that right now. We'll talk more about books in a bit. But one of the resources that you could use to promote, support, etc., GIS is my series of GIS Helps videos. Now, these aren't the end-all, be-all. I don't have a massive, studio production here. I just have me, myself, and I with a couple of low-end pieces of equipment. But the point is, I've got 10 videos about GIS helps you get a job. GIS helps you solve problems. So hopefully that's on my Our Earth video channel, and I'm hoping that that's going to be a helpful resource for you going forward. I also have a video called GIS Provides Double Benefits. And one of the reasons why I get excited about that video is because I'm on there with my twin brother, and it's the only video I know of that combines GIS and the Osmonds. And in order to see the connection between the musical group, the Osmonds, and GIS, you'll just have to watch the video as to how I draw that connection out. Now, how can you learn more about GIS? That's an important piece because we are lifelong learners when we're using GIS. Like any noble endeavor, chemistry, geography, biology, etc. It's a lifelong endeavor. You're not going to learn GIS in this 60-minute webcast. You're not going to learn GIS in a year. It's amazing what you can learn in a short amount of time now that GIS has become cloud-enabled with open data portals and ArcGIS hub sites and so on. But one of the ways is my own Esri URL, Our Earth channel. And it is Our Earth. It's got 5,000 videos. Also, my organization that I'm a part of, Environmental System Research Institute, it's got its own wonderful set of videos, including one of my favorites, which is right here called Seeing the Future. So it starts with Jane Goodall. It has Edison and other explorers and inventors over the centuries in there, talking about how we're really standing on the shoulders of giants when we're using modern geotechnologies, right? It just didn't happen overnight, right? Remote sensing, GPS, all that had to evolve. Web maps came from, maps on paper, which came from maps on film etched into copper plates and going back in time. Al Idrisi's map on silver, 2 silver plates from the 1100s. And what about wood blocks, maps etched in wood blocks, and clay tablets going back to the Babylonians? I mean, we're really, standing again on the shoulders of people that have blazed the trail. I have a spatially thinking podcast that might be of interest. This month was about astrolabes, sextants, and other devices to figure out what your latitude and longitude is at sea in particular before the advent of modern geotechnologies. There's also Esri Press books. There's Learn Lessons. There's a Learn Lesson library. There's Esri and University MOOCs, massive open online courses where you can learn more about this. There's no shortage of resources, and I'm going to paste this story map that I'm creating, that I'm using right now, into the chat box over here on Facebook, and so that you can look at the story map at your own convenience. The point is, I've got resources in here with links that we don't have time to delve into in these 60 minutes together. However, I'm hopeful that you'll actually be able to tap into these and maybe over the weekend, and you'll say, hey, Joseph, I'm looking at this resource right here, this Learn Lesson Library. That's fascinating. And I'll say, that's great. Map on, press on. So if I can be of any service to you going forward in your journey, let me know, okay? 3 of my favorite web mapping applications. It's hard to pick 3, right? It's like the 3 coolest places to visit in Azerbaijan, right? Or the 3 coolest places to visit in Australia. Good on you, mates. She'll be right. Or the 3 coolest bands of all time. I mean, these are difficult to put into short lists like this, but one of them is the Wayback Imagery. The Wayback Imagery. With this single web mapping application, you've got the ability to do this swiping kind of characteristic where you've got this squeegee effect going across, where you can look at urban sprawl or declines in surface water. So for example, Lake Mead, northeast of Las Vegas. Why should we care if the surface water, you can even just pan over here and look at this, why the surface water is decreasing? Okay, we've got cities in very arid areas, not just Las Vegas, but many places around the world. How are we going to sustain those cities? The UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? Water quality and water quantity is a huge one in there. So with this Wayback Imagery, you've got terabyte loads of satellite imagery at your fingertips with level 1 and level 2 teaching abilities. Level 1 being using the web mapping application as it shows here, and panning over to look at coastal erosion in England, deforestation, reforestation, urban sprawl, glacial retreat, construction of major projects around the world, like the islands off of Abu Dhabi or the Three Gorges Dam in China, etc. With this same tool, you've got the ability to do lots of things. With this level 1, no login required, only requires a web browser and an internet connection. Level 2 is this little symbol in the upper left here. If I signed into my ArcGIS Online account, and I can help you get an account if you don't have one, there are various ways to get it through your university, through your organization, and also free ways to get it if you're just an individual curious about all this. But with level 2, you can sign into that account, and then you can bring that data into ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro. Why would you want to do that? Well, in part because then you can add in this case, population density, mean annual precipitation, surface water conditions, stream gauges, soil moisture, etc. Right? You can add in additional layers, and you could do analysis. So exactly how many hectares, square meters, acres, whatever units you want to use is Lake Mead now versus in 2014 when I had it there on the left side, 2014 on the left side, maybe 2020 on the right side. Let's reverse those. Okay, fascinating to be able to do this, and also pretty eye-opening and grim in many places. So that's the Wayback Imagery. We could spend the whole time on that one. The Living Atlas Water Balance is another one of my favorite tools because it illustrates the Internet of Things feeding into GIS. And there are other sites that do that. Stream gauges, wildfires, traffic. In this case, we've got six different water variables. And so I can click on, let's say, the Amazon basin. It's not a winter summer there, correct? If I look at this graph, I'm seeing that it's the wet season and the dry season. Ditto for, I mentioned I was conducting a presentation for these folks in India yesterday. Ditto for many places around the world, showing okay, now I've got India here, and look at the volume of water, the y-axis here, and I can see a very clear monsoonal pattern of precipitation, correct? Why does it matter? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care? Well, if we click on southern Libya, for example, what kind of population density or agriculture is supported by whole swaths of the year where there's absolutely zero precipitation, and even this spike right here is only 15 millimeters. It's not much. Okay, so your hypothesis would be what in terms of population density or agricultural support? So this water balance app, what's the relationship between evapotranspiration and precipitation? Lots of things you can teach and learn about with these apps. Apps are opening up geospatial technology to the masses, really. People are looking at these. The JH2 COVID map and dashboard, that's an app, right? And trillions with a T of views have occurred. So almost everybody with a device around the world has seen that at least once with a tablet, a laptop, a phone. Why? Because it's so useful. And you have access to that same technology with this ArcGIS platform. The Landsat Explorer, we don't have time to actually look at that right now, but it's multi-band. So I can also do time comparisons. And like the Wayback Imagery, I have a level 2 capability where I can actually bring that data into a more fully functional GIS for further analysis.